This is a super fun word matrix to make with the base element FER. Now I use the term base element instead of root because the person who created, Pete Bowers, who created these word matrices, he had a really good explanation that I feel like if I try to explain it, I'll mess it up. But a great explanation for why we don't use the word root, we should use the word base element, and that is for free bases and bound bases. So this is a bound base because by itself it does not make a word. So it needs prefixes or suffixes added to it in order for it to be a word. Now for this one, it's good to start with the word ferry because FER, it means to carry. And if you think about like a ferry, its job is to carry either people or things across the water. So I like to start with the word ferry. Now it's tricky because RY is not exactly a suffix that I had known about. I did look it up on Edam Online and it said that it's a word forming element that makes nouns, meaning a place for or condition of or quantity of. And I thought, well, a ferry is a place for people to be carried. So I'm just saying right now, disclaimer, I'm not positive that this is the correct answer, but it made sense to me based on the information I had. And I think it's really helpful for explaining and remembering the meaning of the base element FER. So start there. And then I like to go into the word confer. So we have the very common prefix CON, and then we put it with our base element and we get confer. And CON means usually with or together. So it's like to carry with. And if you really want to be literal, when you're conferring with someone, it's like you're having a discussion. So maybe you're carrying with them your ideas in this discussion that you're having. So to confer. And then we can add SED and ING to make confers, conferred, and conferring. Now I added a page I don't normally add because there is a suffix changing rule that happens when we add a vowel suffix. And I wanted to make sure that I taught this and I would have my students practice writing out these words. So when I just add the suffix S to confer, I just get to add that S, nothing happens. But then when I add a vowel suffix like ED or ING, I need to double that R. And this is kind of a confusing rule when it's a multisyllabic word because you don't always double that R. If it's a single syllable word, you do. The single syllable rule is in a single syllable word, if you have one vowel and then one consonant, and then you have a vowel suffix, you always are going to double that last consonant. So an easy example of that is hop, the word hop. Think about that word. There's one vowel, one consonant. If you add ED or ING, you're going to have to double that P so that you know that that O is short. It's a little different with multisyllabic words. And what it is if the second syllable is stressed, that's when you double it. So how to know if something's stressed? What that means is it's the syllable that you're pronouncing the most, that you're enunciating the most, but it can be hard to tell. So something that I heard that people use that works for me is to call the word home. So if I were to say conferred, that's like I like would enunciate or stretch that second syllable. And also a way to tell is that CON, we don't say con, we say con, which is that O is representing that schwa sound, and usually the unaccented syllable has the schwa sound. So since that second syllable is the stressed syllable, that's why it is doubled. Now, with FER, as I go along, you're going to see there's actually an easier way to tell if you double it or not, but I'm going to wait on that one and we'll get to it. So in conferring, we have to double that R. So it's just something to bring up. And again, if you've probably taught this with single syllable words, and it is much more difficult with multisyllabic words. I don't expect my students to get it just the first time I show them, but when you do more and more examples like this, that's when it starts to sink in. So go ahead and move along. If we add suffix ENCE, we get conference. Now I love this because if you just try to sound out the word conference, at least the way I say it as almost like two syllables, conference. I don't say conference. I don't enunciate that second syllable. So it sounds, I would spell it wrong if I was just going by how it sounds. But if your students understand and you point out and spend some time on, like, the word conference is actually 3 morphemes, and have them write out a word sum and then write the word. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see if I can write out a word sum. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just show you what I mean by that. Here's a word sum. It's when you take your morphemes and, oops, I don't want it to be capitalized, so C-O-N, just pretend it's not capitalized, plus F-E-R, plus E-N-C-E. So this is that's a word sum. I'm literally like adding those morphemes together. And then you would do an arrow, like if you're writing, and you would write the word. So if I was teaching this to a class, I would have this projected on my whiteboard so that I could also write underneath the word sum, and then they can write the word sum, and then they write the word. And when they write the word, I try to say, don't just like copy the letters you see. Think about the morphemes as you're spelling it. Think about what the word conference is made up of. It's made up of prefix C-O-N, which you see a million times, our base element that we're focusing on, which is F-E-R, and then another common suffix, E-N-C-E, conference. So that is how we make the word conference, and that can help us remember that it's not just 2 syllables. The word conferment, I don't actually use that word, but apparently it's a word. Now we have, if we add D-I-F, can you tell what word we have? We have differ. So I would have my students write on their whiteboards the word differ, and I would point out how there's 2 F's because we need that F that is part of the prefix. And then we need this F because it's part of the base element. So we need both those F's. So we have differ. And then I can say, what other words can you make if you add certain suffixes? Well, if we add S, we have differs. If we add ED, we have differed, differing, difference, and then I guess deferment is probably a word. You could always look it up too. I like to look up words in the middle of teaching because I want to show them that I don't know everything, and that like we have resources that we use. And again, with difference, that's another one where I pronounce it difference, which kind of takes out a whole vowel sound. So it's another way to like have them practice spelling difference and remind them that, well, the base word of difference is differ, and the base element, or the what you would call like the root, the if you keep going, it's that F-E-R, but we have differ, and then we add E-N-C-E to make difference. So that is a fun one to do. Okay. And you can write out the word sum and then write out the actual word again. Then I can make different. Same thing. I don't hear, I kind of pronounce it taking away that E. So have your students again write a word sum so that they're writing each of those morphemes and they're seeing those morphemes, and then have them write the word different. We can add ly to make differently. And with the word sum, we always move from left to right. That's why that ly is not here, because I don't want to say differly. I want to say differently. So that's why I put it like that. So have your students write out the word differently. Again, that's a lot of letters. If we just think of this as a string of letters, that's kind of hard to spell. But if we think of it as 4 common morphemes, much easier. Just a little side note, that DIF is actually an assimilated prefix of DIS, I think. So that what happens is it changes to the F because the first letter of this base element is F. So you'll see that a lot. Now, if you have younger students, you probably don't want to add all of these because it can be a little complicated. But I think 3rd and above can do this. We have different. And if I want to make differential or differentiate, what I do is this is an I is a connector vowel. And you see this a lot with words. I is just a connector vowel. And I have suffix AL if I want to make differential. And if I want to make differentiate, I add suffix ATE. So show this, and then you can, on the whiteboard, write out the word sum and then write the word and just explain each of those parts. Explain that I is just a connector vowel. Explain what happens to the pronunciation when we add all these suffixes, because that's a really common thing that happens over and over again. Our pronunciation shifts as we add different suffixes. So certain letters might all of a sudden represent different sounds. So listen to what happens at T when I say differentiate. I don't hear the T. It kind of, the way my mouth moves, it sort of accidentally makes it sound like sh. So that's just something interesting to point out, and just practicing writing these over and over as morphemes and building them, giving them opportunities to build them, that can be so helpful with the spelling. And then we can make indifferent by adding in before the DIF. So indifferent. And then talk about how that changes that meaning. It makes it like the opposite. We have defer, defers, deferred, deferring, deference, deferent, deferential, deferment. So lots and lots of words. And if you get this product, I have a whole like cheat sheet with like what each of these prefixes mean and like how to explain them, like the literal meaning to your students. So that can be kind of helpful. Here's another one where the R is doubled, and I forgot to mention. So let's write out real quick. Remember that rule I was talking about? Let's write out differed. Notice how I do not double that R, right? And now let's call the word home. Differ. That first syllable is our stress syllable. Since the first syllable is a stress syllable, I don't double the R in the second syllable. Now let's look at defer. Defer. I am going to need to double that. But here's something I want to point out with all of these words with FER, I noticed. If you have a double letter already earlier, because remember this double letter is there simply because it's part of the prefix. If you have a double letter there, you're not going to double there. I noticed that as I was going through. That's an easier way to help your students out with at least this base element, that like, okay, we're not doubling that F because DE is not, that's just the prefix is DE. So we are going to double there. So we'll see more examples of that as we go. Deferral. Okay, now we have in. Let's put it with IN plus FER. That makes to infer something. We have infers, inferring, inferred, inference, and inferences. So we added that ES there. And again, now let's think about, let's say the word, let's call it home. Infer. So my stress is on that second syllable. I'm going to need to double before adding ED or ING. And now let's check. Also, there's no doubles earlier in the word, so that also is consistent with my other little trick that I found. Now the word prefer, right? When you prefer something, you want it, you like it more than the other. So we have prefer, prefers, preferred, preferring. At this point, I would ask my students, let's try on your own first to figure out if you think you're going to double that. Let's write the word preferred or preferring. Think about if you're going to double that. Have them give it a try or talk to a neighbor about what they think, or try to call the word home. And then of course you give them the answer, because I'm not expecting perfection right now. I want them to kind of get the concept. I can also make preference, and I'm going to point out how I pronounce when I say prefer, the way I pronounce it where I live, that E is a long E, prefer. And then when I say preference, I change it. It changes to a short E sound. It's no longer, it's no longer that E sound. It's a schwa. Preference. Or no, it's short. Sorry, it's a short E sound. Hello, preference. So that's just something to point out. That pronunciation shift. And then we have preferent, which is not really a word that I ever used, but apparently it's a word. And we have preferable, or preferable. I kind of say it both ways, actually. I've said preferable, but I've also said preferable. So you can also point that out, that there's different, sometimes we say words in different ways based on where we've heard it. And again, that ABLE, that A is usually schwad, sounds like able. But if we look at what the morphemes are, and something you can do if you have these slides, you can duplicate a slide. So watch me. I'm gonna actually go ahead and duplicate this slide. And if I just want to focus on one word, I'm just gonna like boop, I'm just going to delete it. And since I have made a copy, I don't lose it. You definitely want to make a copy though. And I'm just going to take away, if I just want to focus on one. So if I just want to focus on preference, I could erase this one. If I wanted to focus on preferable, I would just go like this. And then you have your, look, I still have my other slide, so it doesn't matter. But that's something you can do with these, which I love, is just being able to, if you want to, if your students are having a hard time following, you can just go ahead and delete everything and show how you make the word. Okay, next is we have the prefix OF, and we put it with FER, and we get offer. And then you have offers, offered, offering. Here's another one where when you write it out, we have that double F, so you're probably not going to double that R. And this is an assimilated prefix of OB, which is pretty common. You'll see OB often has a lot of those prefixes that last letter changes based on what this letter is. So, refer, referred, referring, referral, reference. That's another one, just like preference, reference. You can point out how with both of them that pronunciation shifts. And again, you can delete just if you want to look at certain morphemes and play with it a little bit. Oh, this is a fun one. Referee. That's super fun because that's a word that they all know, the referee. And I would want to point out how when we say refer, that E is long, but then when we add that suffix EE at the end, it shifts to a shorty sound and it's referee. So it's fun to like play with syllables too. So something I might do is write the word referee on the board and say, we know what the morphemes are. Now let's just look at what the syllables are. And that might explain how we pronounce something. Because remember, morphemes are all about meaning. Words are built based on morphemes. And then when we say them out loud, that's where the syllables come in, because that's all about pronunciation. But they're built on this meaning. So when you're spelling the word referee or thinking about the word referee and you're thinking about the meaning behind it, just remember it is part of that prefix RE and then plus FER plus EE. So that's just kind of fun to look at. Suffer. We have another assimilated prefix. This is a great one to use to really drive home the concept of assimilated prefixes, because the original prefix is SUB, sub, which means under. And again, we assimilate it based on what's there. So that's the word suffer. And it explains again why we have that double F there. It's because it's taking the place of the B of sub, which they have seen probably before. And we're putting it together, we make suffer, suffered, suffering, sufferable, insufferable, because we could take this, insufferable. So that's pretty fun. Transfer. When you transfer something, trans means across, carry across, or beyond. Transfer, transfer, transferring, transferable. Oh, this one's a fun one. Circumference. It took me a second. I'm like, what did I make? It's a tricky one because of, much like when we say difference, preference, when we say circumference, the way we pronounce it, we kind of clip a vowel sound. So this is a great one because circumference is a math word that they're going to use. And so you can talk about what are the morphemes. Practice writing the morphemes in the word circumference, then practice writing the word. And it's not quite so tricky. Aquifer. Oh, that is a typo. We need that to be an I. Aquifer. I'm going to fix that again. I added tele for teleconference, which is kind of fun because it's like a new age thing. We'll fix that there. So glad I caught that. This is fun. Start at FER, and we have fertile, fertilization, let's go back. Fertilize. And we would drop this E before adding that vowel suffix. Fertilization, drop E, and that drop that E too. So the word fertilization is all of these morphemes together. I put this here because, to be honest, I don't think that TILE is a actual suffix, but for the purpose of this matrix, we do know fertile is a word. So I just did it so I could show the word fertile and how to make the rest of the word fertilization. So I think it's fine. At least it's fine for me. So hopefully it's fine for you. So look at this. Oh my goodness, all the words we can make. And then here are all the words. So you could shine that and you could say, let's try to read these words and go through and read them. And then go back, and another activity you can do is you can say a word. Say, find the word with your eyes, and now write a word sum on your whiteboards for that word. So just so many different activities that you could do. Or you could say, you choose a word. Everybody choose a word. Write a word sum on your whiteboard. I'm going to call on you. Tell us the word sum, and we're going to say what the word is. We're going to find it. So those are some activities you can do. Again, you can delete anything. So if you have younger students and you don't want to do like all of these words, just choose. There are tons of super common words. So just delete the morphemes you don't want and just use this, use the morphemes that are more appropriate for whatever age group you're working on. So this is a super fun one because all the things we did, we talked about assimilated prefixes, we talked about the doubling rule, which is a fun one, and we talked about the dropping suffix rule. So lots of great learning opportunities here.